You ever look at the news and just feel like you're missing the bigger picture? Well, there's a group of people who believe they're not just seeing headlines, they're actually watching for signs of the end times. So today, we're going to dive into what it means to be a watchman and why they believe it's more important right now than ever before.
For most of us, we see the world through this constant stream of headlines. We scroll, we react, maybe we feel a little anxious, or maybe we just shrug it off, and then we move on. It's like the news just happens to us.
But then there's this other way. It's not just seeing, it's watching. Think of it like this. It's the difference between just glancing up at the night sky and searching for a very specific star. It's an intentional act, this looking for patterns that might be hidden right underneath all the chaos.
And that right there, that's the core of what it means to be a watchman. So in this explainer, we're going to trace this idea all the way from ancient scripture to how it's being applied today. We're going to try to understand what they're looking for, and maybe more importantly, why.
So where does this whole idea even come from? Well, it's not some new age trend or a political thing. For the people who really hold this view, the duty to watch is actually a divine command, and it's woven right into the fabric of the New Testament.
And listen, this isn't just a suggestion from some minor character. This command comes directly from Jesus himself. The instruction is simple: watch. And the reason? Well, because no one knows the exact time. Which means being alert isn't something you do once in a while. It's got to be a constant mindset.
Yeah, and it wasn't a one-off thing either. It's a recurring theme. Here in the book of Mark, the command to watch is paired with another action: pray. And that, right there, elevates watching from just a hobby, like tracking the news, and turns it into a pretty profound spiritual discipline.
So what this all boils down to is that for believers, watching isn't really optional. It's seen as a fundamental part of their faith, a call to be spiritually awake, to be fully present, not just kind of passively drifting through life.
But to really get this command, we have to go back, way back. See, the whole metaphor of a watchman wasn't just invented in the New Testament. It has a very real and very serious historical role that's rooted deep in the Old Testament.
In this passage, God himself gives the prophet Ezekiel this title. And just listen to the job description here. It's a two-step process. First, you listen for the message. Second, you deliver the warning. This isn't about just having an opinion. This is about being a messenger, and yeah, it's a life or death responsibility.
And this wasn't just a metaphor. It was a real high-stakes job. I mean, just picture it, a lone figure perched on top of a city wall, and their entire focus is just scanning the horizon, looking for the first little hint of dust from an approaching army. Their one job was to see that threat before anyone else and sound the alarm. So you can basically break it down into these three simple steps. First, you have to be in position, up high, paying attention. Second, you have to know what you're looking for. You have to recognize the signs of danger. And third, you have a duty to act on what you see, to blow that trumpet and sound the alarm. Staying silent? Not an option.
Okay, so that was then. How does this ancient role translate to, right now, in the 21st century? Well, believers who see themselves as watchmen are applying these exact same principles to the world we see around us today.
So instead of scanning the horizon for an army, the modern watchman scans the global landscape for trends they believe line up with biblical prophecy. They're looking at things like global conflicts and these huge shifts in alliances, economic changes like this big push for digital currencies, deep cultural shifts, and even an increase in major natural disasters. For them, these aren't just random isolated events. They're like puzzle pieces that are all starting to fit together.
And this is the key, the why behind it all. This verse for Matthew connects seeing all these things to recognizing how close events are. So the whole point of observing these signs isn't to create fear, but to foster this understanding that, hey, maybe these prophesied events are getting closer.
And this is a really, really important point. A biblical watchman isn't trying to circle a specific date on the calendar. In fact, that's something that's widely warned against in Scripture. No, instead, the focus is on recognizing how all these signs are converging. It's about recognizing the season, if you know what I mean.
So this brings up something a lot of people get wrong. Many assume that this constant watching must be driven by fear or anxiety. But if you look at the source material, the true motivation is the exact opposite of that.
Look, there is a world of difference between panic and preparedness. Panic is a reaction, and it's driven by fear. But watching, in this context, is an action driven by a sense of responsibility. One leads to anxiety, and the other leads to readiness.
And this verse right here, it just ties it all together. The command to be ready is the logical result of the command to watch. The awareness you get from watching is supposed to fuel actual preparation, both spiritually and practically. At the end of the day, this isn't something you're supposed to do alone. Just like that ancient guard on the wall, the modern watchman feels this deep sense of duty to sound an alarm, not to make people panic, but to give everyone else a chance to get their own hearts and lives ready.
So ultimately, the way the scriptures frame this, it's not just a role for a select few. It's presented as a fundamental choice for every single believer, a choice between two totally opposite states of being.
This passage from Thessalonians, it just frames the stakes perfectly. Being caught unawares is described as being in darkness, kind of like a homeowner getting caught completely off guard by a thief in the middle of the night. So the act of watching, then, is the choice to live in the light, fully aware of what might be coming.
And the metaphor gets even clearer here. Spiritual sleep is basically presented as the default setting for a world that's not paying attention. The call to action is to consciously fight that, to stay awake, to stay spiritually sober.
And so that brings this whole thing right back to you. After understanding the biblical command, the historical role, and the modern application, the question really turns inward. It's asking for a little self-reflection. Which state describes me?
And we're going to end on this final verse from Revelation. It's not a threat, it's a promise. It reframes this entire act, not as some burden of fear, but actually as a path to blessing. And that simple promise is why for so many, watching isn't just a practice, it's a deep, profound calling.